be in person this morning or through Zoom or through Facebook Live or on our website. We are glad that you're with us. My name is Reverend Gator Lone Wolf. I'm Associate Pastor at Unity Fellowship, and we are delighted today to welcome back our Senior Pastor, Bob Coombs, who's been on leave taking care of his wife, Deb, who's been receiving treatment for cancer. Bob, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thanks for that welcome. Hey, everybody, I've missed you. I'm so glad to be able to join with you today. The treatments are working. They've been rough, but they are working. Deb is feeling better, getting stronger every day. Thank you so much for the prayers and concerns that have been shared with us. It's very, very meaningful to us to know that you all are praying for us and holding you in your hearts. And I'm just glad I can join with you today. Still trying to be very careful. Her immunity is compromised, so I'm not there in person. Trying to stay away from crowds, and when I do, I always wear a mask. But she is doing better, and for the first time since she was diagnosed, since before she was diagnosed actually, she was able to get out of the chair by herself this morning, so that's a big relief, and we're rejoicing over that.
Wonderful, Bob, and again, we're delighted to have you back, at least joining us through Zoom, and so pleased that the good things are happening through the treatments, and that Deb is at least able, like you said, to get out of the chair today. That's a big win.
It is.
So, well, welcome back. And want to remind everybody that during the service, especially today, it will be a dialogue type of service. So this will not simply be Bob and I standing in front of a lecture hall giving a lecture. We want you to engage with us, to share your responses. You can do that through Zoom, coming off mute. You can share it in the chat if it's not too long, and you can share in Facebook. So this service today, again, is really going to be focused on your engagement with us, and to remind you that Unity Fellowship is always a place of refuge for those who exist on the margins, as well those who exist in the majority. We're a safe space, and we will always be that way. Thank you. Now is the time in our service where we open it up for news, joys, and concerns. If you have obviously prayer concerns that you would like to share with us, you're free to do that. If you have praise reports, good things that are happening in your life, feel free to share those as well. So we open the floor now. If you're on Zoom, a reminder to come off mute. If you're on Facebook, you have a request or a praise, put that in the chat and it will be read. If you're in person, ask for a mic.
Gator, I just want to let everybody know that the organ is officially gone from the building. They came in Thursday. It took 2 days for them to dismantle it, and it took all day yesterday for them to load it up. Alex and I are going to be working together to put a montage of photos together to let everyone see the process. And so in the next few weeks, at some point, we'll have that. The gentleman was amazing. His team were amazing. It was bittersweet to watch it leave. Then the Burmese came in yesterday afternoon, and we did major demolition, I should say, and helped get it all tore out, cleaned up, and ready for service today. And we still have a little bit more to go, but it was a blessing that they came in and helped.
Thank you, Daniel, for sharing that update, and thank you and Alex for all the work you did as well. And I be honest, I didn't even notice. So, job well done. I believe that organ's on the way to Florida. I'm sure it is bittersweet, but things change, and I'm glad it's in the hands of people who will enjoy and use it. So that certainly is a praise. Thank you, Daniel. I'd like us to continue to remember Bob and Deb in our prayers as they continue this journey of treatment and ups and downs that come with it. Give them strength and courage and windows of hope that allow them to keep walking forward, one foot in front of the other. So we want to remember them in our prayers today. Also want to remember all those who are struggling. This is the time of year when many people are coming down from the holidays and getting back to some sense of normalcy. And sometimes that normalcy is not what they want. And we remember them today in their loneliness, in their frustration. So we want to remember them. Anyone else? Good things happening? Things you need help with? Let us know.
Yes, Gator. My friend Charlotte asked me to announce that they're having their Martin Luther King coffee house, which is a very fun event at the Unitarian, the UU Church on Allen and Parrish Avenue. And it's Cedar? I'm sorry. Cedar and Parrish Avenue on the corner. Yeah. And it's a fun event. They have lots of jokes and music and poetry and everything you can imagine. And that is next Saturday at 6:45.
Next Saturday, 6:45, I assume, p.m.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. So any and all who can attend that, please do so. Thank you, Sarah Jane. We also want to remember Becky's daughters. Both of them have been diagnosed with cancer, but they have caught them in the early stages. So we certainly want to remember them and Becky. during this time.
Gator, I also want to ask that we remember my post office, the local post office. We're going through some major changes. We're getting new parcel sorting machine and going through basically a remodel and rearrangement of furniture, and I'm in charge of it, so it's really stressing me out, plus my regular job. And we weren't supposed to get the machine till the end of next month, but we're getting it in 2 weeks. So we're behind the 8 ball. So
We'll definitely remember the stress you're going to be under and carrying your regular job as well as in charge of that. Daniel, we will remember you. You carry quite the load. Anyone else this morning? No one on Facebook?
No.
Would you pray with me? Creator, we come to you on this Sunday in January, on the heels of Christmas. Many of us still wondering how it passed so quickly. Entering into the new year, and we hear people talking about resolutions, and maybe in our heart we want an evolution or a revolution. And we ask that you be with those individuals today, and in your way help that to happen for them. We also raise Bob and Deb in our prayers and their family as Deb continues to undergo treatment for her cancer. We remember Becky and her daughters. We also remember Jamie in our prayers. All those unspoken prayer concerns this morning, walk with them, Lord, as well. We give thanks for the model of unconditional love in the beloved community that Dr. King gave us many years ago, and we're grateful that Sarah Jane reminded us of the event. Also, the good things that we're not maybe seeing because of the clouds. Remind us of those things, Lord, and help those replenish our spirits. Open our hearts and minds to the dialogue today, and we ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
if everybody would say the affirmation of oneness with us. We gather in oneness together. We praise and worship God together. We proclaim God together. We welcome and affirm all persons in God's love together. We seek to live for God in every breath and heartbeat together. Now, if you want to join our contact list, text ADD to 270-201-5022. That's 270-201-5022. That's to notify you of the day's sermon at about 9:45 and any special events that we have. Now is time for our tithes and offerings. If you want to text GIVE to 270-449-1664 or click the Donate Now button on Facebook or webpage, or you can mail it to P.O. Box 1401, Owensboro, Kentucky 42302. Also, there's offering plates at both entrances if you'd rather do that.
Now, we certainly every week give thanks for that beautiful music, and for those of us who are able to see the videos, they are just as enlightening. So we give thanks for our music. Bob and I are going to do a dialogue this morning, and we're going to focus on Epiphany. So for many of you, if you've been church folk, or even if you haven't been church folk, you've heard this word before, Epiphany. And maybe it's not been connected to a religious experience, but why are we talking about it today? Traditionally, January 6th is observed as Epiphany, church festival, which commemorates the coming of the Magi and the first manifestation of Christ to the Gentiles, or in the Eastern Church, in commemoration of the baptism of Christ. Now, if you're asking yourself, did they really get there on the 6th of January? Epiphany is not meant to be a factual time and date stamped event. It likely took them months, maybe years, to get there. But today we want to recognize Epiphany and talk about a little of what that may mean to you and me as we enter into this new year. So again, you may have heard this word used in church for this Sunday of Epiphany, or you may have heard somebody say, boy, what an epiphany for me. Or this experience gave me an epiphany. And you think to yourself, what are they talking about? Another definition is an appearance or manifestation of a divine being, an epiphany, a sudden manifestation or perception of the nature or meaning of something, meaning you've never quite understood something, and all of a sudden the clouds clear and you've had an epiphany of what this truly means. And other times it can mean a discovery, a realization, or a disclosure that you've made, a revealing scene or moment. Bob, would you like to add anything?
Sure. There are a number of epiphanies throughout the scripture, beginning with Adam and Eve walking in the garden with God. Those moments when we feel close to God, those moments when new information or new revelation or new realization or an enlightenment moment. I think we all experience epiphanies in a number of different ways. The Celts used to talk about thin places. So it's not just an experience necessarily. It can also be certain places that provide moments of enlightenment. And the Celts believed that there were certain places in the world where we would go where heaven and earth come close together, or the divine and the sacred and the secular come so close together that there's a kind of a crossing over in those places. For me, that as a young person used to be any kind of youth camp. Those were always epiphanal type moments for me, thin places, so to speak. And I think every one of us, and hopefully we can get some people to join in this dialogue with us this morning, talk about thin places that they have experienced, or my friend that many of you know, our friend Richard Mason, likes to talk about God winks, those times when it feels like God has winked at us to say, this is a God moment. You better wake up and pay attention. So let's just talk about how all of us have experienced God in our life, how we've experienced those moments or places that are meaningful and significant and bring us enlightenment or the realization that we're near to God.
as people are mulling this over, Bob, your description about Celts understanding that there's certain places that the heavenly and the earthly are so close. We can experience the divine in those places. I think back to in Native American life what we call a vision quest that many young men and women will go on. And what they're really doing is they're seeking an epiphany. And there's many different holy sites in indigenous life that these people will go to. And it's not just young people, but they're seeking a vision from the divine to either lead them, to answer something, to illuminate something. And so we talk about epiphany. I think about those times as well that are very deliberate, that take preparation, that take study, and even practice with your mental state to be able to receive an epiphany.
I've got something to add, similar. Many times in my life, especially when I was younger, I'm thinking one particular time when we were much younger and our son was a baby, and my husband's work, he was on strike, and we were, close to our last dollar. And I was wondering, how in the world, what are we going to do, I had not been working, and I was looking for a job, and so he was looking for a job, and it was very stressful, and our son was a year old, and I thought, oh, we are not going to make it. I don't know what we're going to do. We had our families had no means to help out, and not like some families where you can call your dad. We were on our own and trying to figure it out. And out of the blue, we got a check in the mail back when they used to do that sort of thing. It was a refund from our insurance company that we had paid on something. And I don't know how that happened, but it definitely was a thank God moment. And many times in my life, I have realized that somebody is looking out for me when things could have gone way wrong and they didn't. I've discovered God has got his hand on me, or I've got some really strong guardian angels up there, because my life is not exciting, but it's gone pretty well, and I'm real happy with the way things have gone. So that's kind of a God wink.
Thank you, Sarah Jane.
Hey guys, it's Jamie.
Sarah, thoughts? Thank you for sharing that, Sarah Jane. A lot of times these moments come during times of crisis or chaos. So that's a good reminder to us that they come unexpectedly most of the time, I think. I think of Jacob on his quest. He was getting ready to go meet his brother for the first time after being out of touch and a great deal of hatred between Jacob and Esau. And he was getting ready to meet his brother for the first time. And this was a moment when everything could have gone really wrong. He was going to have to face him at that time. And the Bible describes a wrestling match between Jacob and some other being, godlike being, angel, man, or God. In fact, that's when he received the new name from, he had been Jacob, and he was given the name Israel, which means God wrestler. And so all of the nation of Israel is named after this moment and this person who wrestled with God. That's a good reminder to us that God honors when we wrestle with our beliefs and our faith. But anyway, it can come in times of real struggle, real chaos, and crisis even.
Okay, Bob, and Pastor Lone Wolf, this is Jamie. I've been having, shall we say, epiphanies when I walk the dog every day. I end up thinking about things. I listen to
Okay.
the music and think about God and things and how everything is different and it's the same because we're all human beings. But what I was thinking about this morning was about loving your neighbor and about what is a sin and what is not a sin. And Pastor Bob says it's okay to talk about things that are important that the church needs to listen to. And today what I need the church to listen to is that what we say is sin, people talk about gay people and they say that's a sin. And a sin is something that hurts your neighbor. And when two people have sex, it doesn't hurt your neighbor if, well, the main thing I'm trying to say is people are saying, I'm going to define what sex is. I'm going to define if you're having sex with someone and you're not married to them, is that not a sin because there's expectation. Expectation, that becomes sin when people are having sex and then they're saying, well, if you're having sex and you don't have it the same way I do, but who knows how people do it? Just because you have reproduction, because you make a baby, does that mean all of a sudden it's okay if you're not married? And these are things you have to think about because we have to think about how we sin because we have the Old Testament, it lays it out, 10 Commandments. And Jesus says, hold on, if it's not hurting your neighbor, it's not a sin, but if you're hurting your neighbor, you're sinning. So if two people, want to have an intimate relationship and committed to each other, then how does that hurt your neighbor no matter who they are?
Thank you, Jamie, for that insight.
Thank you for allowing me to give it.
Sure.
I love the definition for sin. I can't remember which New Testament scholar gives it, but the definition that they give for sin is that which can be forgiven. That is really a better approach to understanding sin from a New Testament Jesus kind of perspective than the way we typically think about sin, is those things that are bad. But if it can be forgiven, that's what sin is.
I think Jamie raises an interesting point as well, that certain people in certain religions seem to define what can be an epiphany, what can be the inspiration of God, and what can't be. And so oftentimes people and whether it be their natural instincts, their natural sexuality, or gender identification, or their gender, whatever, they are made to feel like they are less close. They are not in those spaces where heaven and earth come together because such and such has defined them as sinful or wrong. So I often find that one of the most difficult things is that marginalized people put up against the majority are not allowed to have epiphanies unless they fit a certain rule and they fit a certain type of moral code. And I think so many of us, like Bob said, in crisis, it may have nothing to do with religion or a sense of right and wrong, but we experience these epiphanies, breakthroughs. So I just appreciate, again, Jamie bringing that up in the context of we have too many people that set the standards for what an epiphany is and whether it's valid or not, when every single one of us is connected to the Creator.
When Jesus was talking to Nicodemus, he talked about the Spirit of God, compared it to the wind that blows where it wills. When we try to put God in a box and we say what can or cannot be a sin, what can or cannot be an epiphany, what can or cannot be how we understand God, we're not allowing God's Spirit to blow wherever it wills. God's Spirit is, again, back to the Celts, is not a dove, but a wild goose, uncontrollable, like the wind and like a wild goose, cannot be contained, no matter how big our box is, no matter how pretty the box may be. We don't get to contain God in a box.
Beautifully put.
I'd like to hear from some other folks. What are your thoughts about epiphanies and how we understand God and how we might expect to experience God in this coming year?
One thing that just came to my mind is that we always, I always ask God for to help me through this situation, and I tell Him how I want it done. But it gets done, but it doesn't get done by any way I thought it was going to get done. You know, God works, and He works in His own way. He doesn't work in my way. So that's one thing I think come to my mind is that God works in you, but He works how He wants to work, not how you want Him to work.
Does anybody struggle finding epiphanies in their life?
Are there particular places that you find life-giving and where you find it to be more likely to have these God moments?
I think that absolutely, Bob. I think you have to have your mind open. If your mind is constantly cluttered full of all your problems and to-do lists and all of that, I think it'd be harder to hear God talk to you or to realize that God is working in your life. I think you have to have your mind open, and
Yeah.
a lot of times, you have an idea or solve a problem or remember something that you have forgotten, like when you're falling asleep at night or you're walking your dog or you're in the shower, or sometimes when you're on automatic and you're not really thinking of things is when those things come to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? Places, times where you have epiphanies or experience God moments. Well, let me address the almost elephant in the room for just a moment. A lot of people attach meaning to things like organs, which is now gone from our sanctuary. You may have some strong feelings about that. You may attach a significance and a meaning to that loss that makes it more difficult for you to have an experience with God. Some of you may feel very differently about that. What do you think about that? Anybody have strong feelings about the loss of that organ?
I just want to say, I mean, I notice it now that something is missing. So, you know, that what's missing in my life, what's missing is something missing. Maybe it's making us think about missing. I mean, it seems incomplete. There's a hole in the wall, but, you know, nothing's missing as long as we have God and the people. You have God and the people, and we don't put God in the box, and the box is light anyway. Nothing's missing if we don't see it as something to be missed.
Okay. Anyone else?
Bob, I think being here the last 3 days, I did not think that it would be something missing until one of the organ company's employees sat down behind the organ and played it its one last time in this building. Then it got real, I guess, and emotional, and I was surprised, even though we did not use it hardly ever at all, but knowing that it was no longer there to be used, I guess I had put more value to it than I knew, and so I can. Yes, it's something missing, but like Jamie said, if we don't, as long as we've got God and everybody around us, then what's really missing?
Right.
And I would even expand Bob's point. In this instance, it's an organ that's been dismantled and taken somewhere else. But how many of us have depended on people in our lives, relationships, jobs that define who we are? And then once time changes those, something happens, we feel lost. We feel unable to connect not only with those individuals or those jobs or whatever it is, but with God. Has anybody struggled with that? I know I have.
Without the organ, I feel like I'm not in the same sanctuary I always felt at home at. It made the room feel complete.
And yet, even with those losses, there's a process where we may grieve and we may feel that loss very significantly for a while, but then we move on. and we find that God still moves with us, that we're not alone, that we're not incomplete.
But I also feel like that it's change, and when you grow, you change. So if there is no change, you become stagnant and stale. But with growth, you change. So it's growth, it's change.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I find myself looking at it. Now, when we had it, it didn't matter. It was there. I didn't look at it. But now that it's gone, I'm looking at it. I'm not. All these things I could be looking at, and I'm looking at a hole. And what about us? If my life is a lot like that wall, I've got a lot missing. Does that mean people are looking at me? Can people tell? I'm just looking at it. What about people who are marginalized in society, people handicapped, people speech impediment, people are looking at them, so that just reminds me of that when I look at that I'm looking at it because something's different and I'm looking at it, and it is what it is.
I've been in church since I was small, and I've never been to a church where we had a pipe organ. So a pipe organ to me was something, we never had. And we did have an organ, and Alan and Quinn can make that organ talk. And when we left Seven Hills, we tried to get an organ. We tried to sell the organ. The people that replaced us at the church, they tried to get rid of the organ. And the last time I saw it, it was sitting outside underneath of the shed. Nobody wanted the organ, So things like I have a picture at home of the Owensboro wagon factory. Things come and things go. Organs are replaced with keyboards and other things through videos. So things come and things go, but everything remains the same.
Bob, I want to share a quick story. I think kind of changing back to Epiphany. Years ago, as a young adult, I was extremely snob and refused to buy anything used. It had to be brand new. It had to be name brand. And looked down my nose at people that were homeless or what have you. One night I was driving home like at 2 o'clock in the morning from work and going through an industrial part of town, and I see this young lady carrying a baby walking down the street, very destitute looking, disheveled. And I looked at her, I said, look at her, and drove on by. I got about a block away, and I'm like, wait a minute, she may need help. I just got that feeling. Decided to turn around to help. When I got back to where she was at, she was gone. And being in an industrial area, there was nowhere for her to have gone. So at that point, I felt like God was telling me to reach out and help people and quit being such a snob. That not everybody is the same as far as social status, but to reach out and help when I felt necessary. And I think that was kind of an epiphany, and I think that's why I try to help so many people now.
Yeah. one of the epiphanies recorded in the scriptures is when Abraham is visited by a group of people, and it is described as angels unaware. And I think if we were to take our time with this morning, we could go person by person by person, and you would have more than one story of moments like these when you entertained angels unaware, or something happened that made you look at life in a different way, and you experienced that God wink. Thank you so much, all of you, for your participation this morning. I've been away for so long. It's great to hear all these different voices speaking. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I just echo what Bob said. It's great to have the dialogue this morning. Even if you weren't able to participate and this had you thinking, good. Let that thinking and that searching and that reflecting on different epiphanies carry you through this week. We pray for your safety, your health, and for good news to abound. You're always welcome at Unity. Please remember to invite others to enjoy it with you. Share the good news of this community with others. We thank you again for attending today on whatever platform you did, and wish you a wonderful week. Goodbye.